Windows down, radio up, hands riding the window like ears on a pup, wishing we never, ever had to go back home. Stop off quick for a drink and a snack, and then he says to me, let's hit the road, Jack. Well, I got brave and asked if I could drive. 12 years old, 4 years more, till I could hit the road like never before. But he tossed the keys and told me to take the wheel. Breaking gear and then we hit the road. These memories in my heart just can't be sold. 'Cause when we drive, there's nothing that compares to the ride. And that messy wind-blown air, that two-door, three-seat F-150 feels free to Papa and me. Four years later, 16 years old, I grabbed my keys and I hit the road. And I called Pam and asked, would you wanna go? Cruising down Jackson and doing 35, got nowhere to be, and that's alright. Taking our time, just wasting the day away. Well, Papa said I ain't been drove in years, and there's nowhere that I'd rather be than here. 'Cause when we drive, there's nothing that compares to the ride. Messy wind-blown air, that old wide long bed F-150 feels free to Papa and me, to Papa and me. I was headed back from seeing Papa, told him he had made it through the long haul. Thought until the day he couldn't no more. Well, I loved him and knew he loved me. Walking back to the truck, I could hardly breathe. It's where I saw my Papa in there waiting for me.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tony Mixa, President of Walter State and Chair of the CASA Board. I want to welcome you to a night of inspiration. I hope you'll enjoy the stories that will be heard about our CASA volunteers, and especially about our CASA kiddos. I hope you enjoy these stories and contribute to what we're doing at CASA.
Hi, my name is Kelly Williams, and I'm Executive Director with Lakeway CASA. We serve Hamlin, Jefferson, and Sevier counties. CASA stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocates for Children. We advocate for the best interests of abused and neglected children that have found themselves in the child welfare system. I'm so glad that you're here this evening. After I speak, you're going to be hearing from our volunteers who will share their stories of serving as an advocate for abused and neglected children. Now, these stories may sometimes be difficult to hear, but also very heartwarming. The CASA will walk you through what it means to be an advocate for these children who, through no fault of their own, have found themselves in the child welfare system and are in great need of an adult who will stay with them through the duration of this case. As you can imagine, this past year has been a challenge for our organizations like so many others, but we are so grateful for the community support over the last year. We have been able to keep up with our activities with the children by being there creatively through virtual means, through telephone calls for drive-bys. Many of our volunteers have come up with great ways to keep that bond going. And I'm excited to have you hear more about all their activities over the last year. I want to thank you again for all your support And it is my hope that this video will inspire you to continue your support of Lakeway CASA. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brian Crosby, and this is my wife.
Hi, I'm Tina.
We are both CASA members. I've been CASA for around 13 months. And Tina, how long has it been?
3 months.
3 months, okay. And, we evolved to that because I realized, just like all the other things that happen in our life, our marriage, they're only enhanced when we're working together as a team. And her coming on board has escalated, expanded our abilities to help the children. I'd like to tell you today about one child in particular. In the 13 months, I've had 5, maybe 6 cases. This case is one individual, whereas all my other cases are 2 or more children. Very challenging dynamics. This particular child, I was assigned to him when he was 17 and a half years old. So as a parent, you can already imagine the challenges that we were going to face here. I didn't know what I was going to walk into. He arrived in the system after, multiple failures in his parents' choices, where, like many of the cases where they place their self-needs above those of the children. And the state steps in to assist the parents with getting a better vector on behalf of the children. But he had been product is a bad word. He had been in the system for 9 years, of which about 6 of those were in resident. I mention that because take important notice as parent. You nurture your children, you deal with maybe 2 children or 4 children at a time, instead of the tens or dozens as a group setting. So it's important to note with this particular child that he didn't receive that specifically tailored attention to his needs as he would in a traditional setting. He was challenging, he was rebellious, he was quite non-trusting of authority. And being an authoritative figure, just personality, I had to dampen myself quite a bit for him. But that was it, because it was about his needs, not mine. I learned a lot from this particular case. One thing that really inspired me was he and I had many heartfelt conversations. And at innocuous times, you never see it coming, he would actually repeat something that I said to him, and then go further to describe how he applied it. And it was a reminder. Of course, always being careful what you say, but, just think. The things you might not think are as important, those children may apply a different level of importance to it. He is still on his journey. From the first time I met him, he told me, I'm gonna go to college. And it's not that I disbelieved him. Again, I'll revert back to, I was assigned to him at age 17 and a half. He had been in the DCS system for pretty much his entire adolescence. 6 short months, he's now faced with being an independent and productive member of society without having been exposed to those things to prepare him to do that. So all those things you could think about that you teach your kids from age 8 to maybe 18, he wasn't exposed to. And now he gets volumes of paper and books. Do this, do this, do this. So, a lot of discussion with him was to help him settle down. Hey, loosen the strands, prioritize, focus, engage the other resources that are out there to help you, approach these things in a meaningful manner. I would tell you that with everything with this particular case, it's just reminders. It was reinforcement of the reasons that got in CASA to begin with. And my wife had similar reasons because she looked at this program, my goodness, almost 10 years ago. And I still had my business, but we give, we share, we prepare like our own children. We prepare people to be our successors. And if you think of that in the simplest terms, with the courts intervention for the safety and welfare of the children, and it holding the parents accountable to something to bring their compass back in line and reunite those families if it's possible. We are there to serve and give them other experiences that maybe they didn't see. Because I'm a firm believer, we all bring something different to the table. And those experiences only serve to build and expand one's knowledge, capabilities, goals, potential. Just like this particular individual would come back with something that I never thought he really paid attention to and tell me how he applied it, I knew something good came from every time I had contact with him. And even though I didn't lack any confidence about my abilities, it was a reminder, a stark reminder, which I know CASA is there for. The right person at the right time, at the right place, has the ability to significantly and positively impact a person's life or help them meet their needs.
Hi, my name is Denise McCullough, and I have been a CASA coming up on 3 years. My very first case of abuse or neglect was of a little boy named Theo. When I got the case, he was not quite 3 years old, and he actually was nonverbal, and he was taken out of a situation that was very volatile. There was drugs, violence, there was neglect, there was all kinds of things. And going into my first case like this, I really didn't know what to expect. And I was quite shocked when I went to my first few interviews. The one thing that really stands out to me is that so many people had so much to say, but very few of them told me the truth. And one of the things I was told was that this little boy's dad had abandoned him, and that they had no idea where he was, and that he didn't care about him, and that he had moved on with a completely different life. Well, with that information, I began looking on social media to see if I could track down a dad. And my supervisor happened to help me with that, and we found him. So I contacted him immediately, and I just asked him a simple question, because I wasn't sure if he was the dad or not, but I said, "Do you have a son named Theo?" He immediately responded, and said, "Where is he? What happened to him?" And so right then and there, that shattered every story I'd already been told about the dad. He was working on a job out of state up north. Within 2 days, he was in the state of Tennessee, and within 3 days, he met his son for the very first time in almost 2 years. The next day, he met him the next day we were in court, and that dad was reunited with his child. The interesting thing about this case is that this child was in the system, little Theo, for less than 30 days. That is unheard of. I was told going into the case to expect to be on it for at least 18 months. Within 30 days, he was reunited with his dad. I had the privilege of going to another state where he currently lives to see the home that he was returned to see the sweet little bedroom, to meet the rest of the family. I now follow him on Facebook, and his new wife, and this little boy. He just got a puppy. At Christmas, he had a Christmas tree. On his birthday, he had a birthday party. I've seen pictures of him at the beach. This was a little child who, without a CASA, would probably still be in the system. And now he is enjoying what a normal family is and what a little boy deserves. I will never, ever forget little Theo.
It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Elena, a former CASA child who will share her journey through the child welfare system and also share her memories of her CASA volunteer advocate, Marie.
Hi everybody, my name is Elena Rosa Marie Hoover, and that is my adoptive name. So my name used to be Rosa Marie Carroll when I was here in Morristown before the adoption. And I have 3 siblings, and the 3 of us were here in Morristown living with our mom and their father. And for our childhood, it was a little bit more disruptive and a little bit more, I guess you could say, scary than a child typically should go through. And had a lot of downtime, like a lot of despair, I guess you could say, a lot of hurtful memories. But as you have siblings, you can always still have the good memories, even though you're going through a hard time in life. So for us as kids, or myself in general, you know, we kind of had it hard from the start. Mom was not a very stable parental role. She had me 2 days before she turned 17. So that in and of itself was a hardship for her. And then it kind of led for us to have hardships because she made one poor decision, and then it led into us having a rough childhood. But, you know, as you get older, you start to figure out that certain things are not okay. And for us, I figured that out a little bit sooner than I feel like a lot of kids do, which gave me the strength, I guess you could say, to kind of want to get us out of that type of situation. So we suffered a couple of different types of abuse. So we suffered obviously verbal abuse and physical abuse, but we also suffered from sexual abuse. And then my mother, you know, she had an issue with drugs. She had a drug problem, and that led to a lot of hardships in our entire family. On and off for a lot of our early life, we were sort of just bounced back and forth in between family members. Before my little brother and little sister were born, my grandmother had custody of me. And then my mother had my little brother, and then we went to a family friend. And then she had my little sister, and we ended up going in between an aunt that we had and a family friend that she would let assume guardianship over us. Then, as we got older, it was a little bit harder to, I guess you could say, find the happiness in life, because just because you are moving out of a particular situation and into a new guardianship doesn't necessarily mean that the abuse stops and that the hurt stops. So I think I was most likely in the 4th grade, maybe, and I had already been assigned a caseworker, but I had a separate worker that she was my saving grace. And her name is Marie, and she was my CASA worker. Well, advocate. And she is the one who finally just gave us that chance and listened to us. Well, me, as being the oldest sibling, you kind of feel as if it's your responsibility to assume the adult role. And I stepped into that very heavily and wholeheartedly. And it's very intense when you're a kid and you're trying to figure out life, even though you have no idea what it's supposed to be, but you just feel that there is something wrong and you need to help fix it. And for me, I finally got to the point where I broke down when Marie came and visited me at school. And I feel as if me and my siblings had had enough. And I finally just fell into her arms almost and just boo-hooed at my school principal's office to her and just asked her to help us. And she was the first person who had the will and the strength to do that for us. So that day at my school, crying in her arms, asking for help, she had zero hesitation. She did everything that she could to pull us out of the home that we were in. She helped get us court dates so we can kind of get the supervision, adult supervision, parental visitations for our mom and things like that. And even with all the good things that she did for us and trying to help my mother kind of get her life back on track, you know, you can't always help everyone. My mother ended up losing her rights to us, her parental rights, and Marie helped us find our own homes that we belonged in. For us, she gave us that hope that every kid is really just striving for someone to show them just a glimmer of. But for her, it was just so easy for her to do that for us. And I just wish that every foster kid had this type of person in their life. Because not every kid gets this opportunity to have a CASA worker. And for me, she was my light at the end of the tunnel, that I knew that she was gonna help me. I knew she was gonna help me just have a brighter future, and for my siblings as well. And she just gave me that little bit of hope that I knew that I needed to say, okay, we're only gonna be here for a little bit longer. It's going to get better. We are going to be happy eventually. We are going to have normal lives. And when it happened, it was just the biggest burden just lifted off of our shoulders. Our hearts were so full because we all three found our own families that took us in with zero hesitation. All three of us ended up getting adopted. We have siblings and all these good things. And honestly, I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for CASA and all the magical things that they can do for us. Just being able to have somebody to talk to, just being able to have somebody that is willing to listen and willing to have somebody that will want to help you figure out the next step in order to make your life turn around for the better. And having her there by me in the courthouse, having to stand up in front of a judge at the age of 12 saying, this is not the situation that we should be in. We need to be in a better situation. We need to be like we would like to be adopted and things like that. And just having her in the courtroom with me just let my nerves just settle. And it gave me the strength that I knew that I needed to be able to stand up and ask for what we deserved as children and getting out of those bad situations. So if it weren't for her and if it weren't for CASA, I have no idea where I would be. I could most likely be a statistic, you know, a kid that aged out of the system and followed down the wrong path, as many of us do without that help that we need. But when it comes to CASA, it helped me fuel that fire in my heart to want to be a better person, because they were giving me this opportunity and I could not waste it. So for me, it was just such a powerful thing, and it was just hope. That is the only word that I can use to describe this nonprofit organization. Is it gives children hope. It gives families hope that everything is gonna be okay.
My name is Marie Nicely, and I am currently the Volunteer Services Director at Lakeway CASA. But I started out as a volunteer in 2004, and then took a part-time position as a program director. And that's when I met Elena and her siblings. We were appointed to the case after her mother had gotten out of prison and wanted to regain custody of them, and they were with a family friend at the time. So I remember there was a lot of like accusations between the two ladies, and the judge appointed us to kind of figure out what was actually true and what was going on. So I can remember the first time I met her, actually. I went into the home, and there were a total of 10 kids in the home, and Elena and the caregiver's son were the oldest of all those kids. So it was very chaotic, and I remember the little children, you know, they wanted a lot of attention, so they were all over me. But Elena, she was sweeping the floor, and I can remember her just kind of being off to the side and would glare over. So I knew, I was like, oh, it's going to take me a while to build a relationship with her. But I just kept coming back. I'd always felt like there was something not right in that home. But the kids, you know, they just wouldn't talk about it really. So I had to establish that relationship. And I think after just going and meeting with them and playing with them, you know, I didn't go in and interview them like the Department of Children's Services may. I just tried to build that relationship. And I went to see her at school because I felt like she was hesitant to talk to me at the home. And when I did, she just spilled her heart out about what was going on. And she was tired. She was done. And I think she had been very used to DCS coming in and interviewing them, but they didn't know them. So they were not going to tell their deepest, darkest secrets. But I had built enough of that relationship where she was able to share that with me. And I remember at the time I was actually 9 months pregnant, and I had told my boss at the time, I was like, I cannot have this baby till I make sure these kids are out of this situation. And she actually came into DCS custody, and I had my baby 2 days later. So I definitely worried about them a lot. They did have a very chaotic upbringing. There was still a lot of family dynamics that were difficult even after they came into state's custody. They moved foster homes a lot. So I can remember, you know, going to all the different places to see them. It was difficult to see them go through that. They were eventually all separated, which I had a really hard time with. But, you know, now that I look back on it, I think that was best for the three of them individually. But I just wanted them to know that I cared about them and I cared about what happened to them. And that was, you know, really important to me. So do you remember like me coming in or other people coming in all the time? What do you remember about that?
So, yes. So as a foster kid, you kind of, it's kind of the routine as a foster kid, and you finally get, I guess you could say, you finally get put in the system, and they start sending all of these caseworkers, all of these just people trying to figure out what's going on in the situation. And, you know, you ended up being one of the people that got thrown into the situation as well. And I remember you first came to us, the first visit, we were at the 5-bedroom apartment right down the road, and all 10 kids and 3 adults that lived in the house were all there. Of course, I'm sitting over here cleaning because that's always the thing that I had to do.
Yes, you're always
as the oldest kid. Help me clean, help me feed the kids. All those things. So you would come by and you asked us, like, all of us, you would always pull us, like, sit us like down on the couch and always say, how is the situation? Like, are you okay? Like, is there anything that you want to see done differently? Is there anything that I can try to help? Like, is there anything that you would like for me to help with? And of course, in the beginning, us kids, you know, we have a very small circle, and we don't let a lot of people in just because people come in and out of our lives every month. They send somebody in, and they all ask the same questions, like, are you okay? How can we help? Like, is there anything you want to, and eventually you just get so sick and tired of hearing people asking you the same questions because you don't ever see anything being done, even though you're telling them. And that's a big reason why foster kids don't open up, because when we do, nothing happens. Right. But then with you, it was completely different. You put in that effort. You showed up month after month after month, and you didn't go away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't mean you
I was like,
didn't go away.
I'm gonna find out what's going on.
I don't mean you didn't go away in like why does she keep coming? You didn't go away as in you were a constant in our life. Like, you gave us that little tiny bit of stability that we needed to let us know she's here to help. She's not just here to ask questions and leave and never see us again.
Yeah.
So that made me feel like, okay, maybe I can let Marie in.
Yeah.
Maybe I can give her what she needs so she can actually help us and not just show up and ask us questions like everybody else does.
Right.
So you actually put in the work and the time, and you proved to me, you know, because I was older and I could understand that you were coming around more often. Just kind of like, oh, someone's visiting, cool. You know?
Yeah.
So I saw the underlying want that you had to help us, and that in and of itself gave me the willingness to, like I said, break down and just let you know what was going on and let you in and have you help us.
Yeah. Well, I
So-
definitely could. It helped that I did kind of establish a relationship,
Yeah.
because I can remember just having like that feeling, like you were testing me out. I definitely had that feeling.
Get
So
to make
I-
sure they're gonna stick around.
Yes. So I was like, I'm gonna go see her at school. I'm gonna talk to her outside of here, because I felt like by that time I had visited with you enough where I knew
you could get some.
there was something.
I would tell you a little something.
Yeah.
And there it was. That was the breakthrough that
Yeah.
started the ball for our future. And that day was such a sad day, but it also was the first day that we knew that our lives were going to start turning around.
Yeah.
So that
I didn't want to
was
leave.
such a powerful day in so many aspects, and it made our bond just
Yeah.
so strong. And I remember after that, I always told you everything, like these foster parents or did this or did this, and I feel like this today, and just everything. It was almost like you were my confidant.
Yeah.
You weren't even a CASA worker. You weren't someone that was appointed to me. You were someone that came into my life, and we became like just not inseparable, but like I knew that I could always call you.
Yeah.
I was like, if something's wrong, I gotta call Marie. Something doesn't feel right. I gotta tell Marie the next time I see her, or somebody did this. I need to let her know. And it just was. It was so beautiful to have somebody like that. It was so beautiful to have that type of relationship with someone when you don't have it with anyone in your entire support system.
Yeah.
You don't even have one.
Well, and I think that's what makes CASA different, because, you know, these are volunteers. It's people doing it because they really do care. And instead of, you know, having a caseload of 25, and I know that, you know, I work with DCS workers every day. I know they love their kids. I know they care about their kids. They just don't have the time to build that kind of relationship. And I think that's what sets CASA apart.
Hi, we're the O'Briens. I'm Ed,
And I'm Barbara.
and we're CASA volunteers.
We've been with CASA for about 3.5 years now, and we've so far had 4 different cases involving 11 children, and each one has been so different.
Completely different. The first one we had was the sexual abuse of a young girl, and that one was challenging. And probably one of the biggest challenges we faced initially is that the girl's guardian didn't believe her. And the court thought that they needed an advocate just to speak for her.
In fact, initially the girl's mother didn't believe her either, but fortunately that all changed, and her mother and her parents became advocates for her as well.
The results of that one were good, so that was a win for us and for the CASA program, I believe. And then we had a case that involved 2 children, and it wasn't really the children initially, it was the parents who were in the court system, in the criminal court system, for sexual crimes not involving their children. But the court thought that those children needed someone to look out and make sure that their rights were being looked into and that their needs were being addressed.
One of the things that made that case so challenging is that the children were being cared for by someone who was not in the area. So that entailed some long trips. But eventually, in fact, just last night, we got a telephone call from the girls. They had received our birthday cards. Their birthdays were very close together. And they were calling to thank us and just thank us for paying attention to us for all of that time. So that was one of the real bonuses
that was
being a CASA volunteer.
That was the kind of a bonus where you pick up the phone and 2 little girls sing out, "Hi, Ed and Barbara, we're calling to," and it was just a great feeling, you know. So they're no longer part of the system. They've graduated now, if you will, but we still send them cards, and they still think of us every now and then, and that is a reward in and of itself.
So that was a real success story. But I almost feel like we've gotten the cart before the horse a little bit, because I said we'd been CASA volunteers for about 3.5 years. But how we got to be CASA volunteers, I think is really important, because it was from a volunteer, another CASA volunteer, telling us about CASA and asking us to volunteer. So spreading the word is just so important, because CASA needs to grow. Our judge in Sevier County has told us that he could use 50 more CASA volunteers. So I hope folks listening to this will think about that and look at one of the opportunities to get the training and become a volunteer.
Yeah, when you think about it, there's so many ways that CASA can help. There's so many ways that people can help CASA and can help those of us that are willing to be advocates for these kids. You can become one. It's easy to do. I'm sure that we'd love to have you. The training is comprehensive and will give you a pretty good background in it. And there's always someone you can ask questions when you get confused. Of course, you can spread the word and help others understand what we do and the need for the volunteers. And then finally, you know, we can donate to it. And in this time of COVID and the uncertainty now of all fundraisers, any agency in the community that uses normal fundraising procedures is having to come up with new ways and new methods to do that. So, you know, that would be wonderful for anything that anyone could do to help get the word out about the need for volunteers to protect these children.
Yeah, Ed mentioned the difficulties of COVID, and that has made our job as CASA volunteers more challenging, because one of the things that makes you feel so appreciated and helps you bond with your children is that, you know, the hands-on, the hugs and the touching, and just being close to them. And that's something that we haven't been able to do through COVID. So that's been a challenge.
The big challenge on that for me was it took 6 months to a year before one little girl decided that it was okay to hug me. And I always told her, she said, I don't want to hug you. And I said, no, you don't have to ever hug anybody you don't want to. And finally she said, I want to hug you. So I was real happy about that. And then COVID hit. And now all of a sudden she runs up and can't.
Now we're having to wave at them from the porch, so it makes it a little difficult.
But so that's a little difficult.
But thinking about another child too, that was just, I guess you'd call him one of the hard cases, that so distant and just not very comfortable around other people. And finally he wanted to be picked up and held. So in moments like that's what makes it so rewarding.
My name is Kristen. I've been a CASA for right around a year now. It's been one of the most fulfilling years in a volunteer program, I have to personally say. My why I became a CASA became very clear to me right off the bat. Whenever I graduated high school, I wanted to become a part of my community. I wanted to help in any way possible. So I reached out to a couple of community programs, and I could never find, my heart just didn't feel there. I didn't fit in with the people, or it just didn't seem to work. But when I found CASA, I immediately felt this is where God has put me to be. After my training, I got my first case and I was very nervous, but I just kind of fit right into the role. It was intimidating, but also very fulfilling from the start. So quite early on, I became a part of a specialty court in Jefferson City. It's called Safe Baby Court. They actually just rolled out with it in 2020. And I was assigned the very first case. No pressure on my first, little CASA case. But anyway, it's a new program, and it gives a different approach to families in the court system. It's a 0 to 3 years, and we have a different outlook on how court goes and how we actually help the parents and offer more resources to the parents and the children. The resources that Safe Baby Court has to offer the families have been astronomical, from really just giving them a better foundation, and the way the courtroom sits is quite different. We all sit at a round table, and the families are included on much of the discussion. They give us their wants and their needs and how we can better help them get a better foundation. And my case especially has benefited from this. My mom is doing better than what she would have been in a normal juvenile courtroom. And I truly believe it's because of those resources. So going into court and being a part of court is never a good thing for families. Nobody wants to be involved with DCS or deal with attorneys and attorneys' language. But that's where me as a CASA comes in and gets to play that middleman role. I get to talk to DCS, and I also get to talk to the families and be more of the middleman and kind of help things along. I also get to experience and have more hands-on with the kids and how my CASA kids are doing. My little CASA girl is, she's 2, and she doesn't talk much, but her giggles make me giggle, and we have a really good relationship. When I first came to her where she was staying, it was at her grandparents', she seemed a little bit timid, and it's probably because she'd been through quite a change recently. But as time has progressed, she now runs up to me, and we have really good little games going, and we always play peekaboo. And it's been awesome to change to be a part of a bad situation, but also make it very good. And CASA is where I plan to be. I am a court-appointed special advocate, and I plan to continue being and changing kids' lives that are in the court system.
So my name is Lakia Comer, and I have been a child advocate for about 2 years now. One of the things that drew me to CASA was that I've always had a passion for helping others, especially working with children. And so I had done some research and came across CASA, researched their background, what their mission statement was, everything that they stood about. I prayed on it, and then the next day on my job, my volunteer coordinator, Marie, came in and I seen her lanyard and I got excited, and we instantly hit it off and started having a conversation about CASA and everything that they stood for, and I just knew that it was something for me. So one case that stands out in mind is a recent case that I have been blessed to be on. It is a case that took me outside of my comfort zone. I've always wanted to have my volunteer coordinator go with me in the initial visit, but it was something about this particular case that the gloves just came off. I wasn't afraid anymore. It was just something about this little girl that just made me want to just charge right in. I remember getting the background story, going over the case, and just knowing, like, this is my case. This is for me. This is the case that got me out of my comfort zone. This is the case that made me who I am today. And I'm so thankful. I'm sorry. I'm so thankful for that opportunity, because when I first met this little girl, she had so much sass. You could tell from her experience that she had so much anger, and it was understandable for everything that she had gone through. And when we first met, she wouldn't look at me, she wouldn't really talk to me. She would talk to her parent, and that parent would communicate, to me for her. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, we are going to be best friends by the time this case closes, because I am not going to give up on this kid. And I just remember seeing a part of myself in her. And I remember, when she had entered into state's custody, and like I said, there was even more anger and even more frustration and more hurt, and she blamed herself so much. And I remember when we had to go before the judge, she wanted to talk to the judge so badly. She wanted to know when she was going home, what was going to happen in her life. And she got before the judge and she froze. And she looked at me and she looked at her foster mother. She just froze. And I remember thinking, I've been there. I've been a child once before and thought, what am I gonna say? They're not gonna listen to me. I'm just a kid. And on our next home visit, the Lord laid it on my heart. I had this journal that had been in my drawer for like over a year now. It was this pretty purple sequence journal. You could rub it one way and it would turn silver, and you rub it the other way and it would turn purple. And I went to the home visit and we talked and we laughed, and she was starting to come out of her shell. And before I left, I took this journal out and I gave it to her and I said, you have to promise me. You have to promise me that you will use this. And I told her, I said, I know that being a child is hard, especially in this situation. And sometimes you can feel like people are not going to listen to you. You're a kid. Your opinions, your thoughts don't matter. But here's this journal, and I want you to promise me that you will write down your questions for the judge. Write down every thought, every feeling. Do not keep anything bottled up inside. And she said, okay, Miss Lakia, all right. And so the next time we went before the judge, she pulled out that journal. and she had her questions written down before the judge. And the judge looked at this journal, and the judge was just so taken by the journal. And she just opened it up before the judge, and she would point to each question, and she would read it off. And the judge would just communicate with her. Every question that she had, she answered it, and she'd write down, and she'd, check off everything that she wanted to ask. And it was just like this light, this communication method, something so simple was just so powerful for her. It gave her a voice. And even to this day, a year later, she still writes. And even when she lost her parent, I told her, I said, promise me you won't stop writing. Promise me. I said, I know it gets hard to communicate and you have all these feelings and all these emotions going on right now, but promise me you will not stop writing. She said, okay, I promise. And so to this day, she still writes. To this day, she uses her journal to communicate with the judge, with her foster family, with, me, with anyone. She uses that journal, and it's just something so simple. It's become so powerful for her, and just such a blessing just to see her grow and blossom, and she's not afraid anymore.
Hello, my name is Chris Yarlett. I'm the Vice Chair for Lakeway CASA, and I'd like to personally thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening. Hopefully, this night of inspiration has inspired you to consider a gift to our organization that will make such a huge impact throughout the entire Lakeway area. Your dollars matter, so please consider helping all of the children that we support and our volunteers who support those children throughout the entire Lakeway area. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next year.
It was something I've never felt.